So much for coming out tonight to learn more about resumes. We have Brendan here, who is our resident resume guru. He's also a product manager with years of experience from Australia, and currently he works at a nonprofit research center in Australia investigating autism, which is really, really cool. And it's awesome to see product managers do some really good things for their communities and for the world. So yeah, not David, Brendan, passing it off to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for the introduction and the warm welcome, guys. Or good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, for my case, of where I am. Thanks for joining us today, guys. We're going to be talking about resumes. I hope you're all excited. If you want to let me know in the chat where you're calling in from, that would be fantastic as well. Or tell me how you feel about your current resume. I don't know about you guys, but my resume is a constant work in progress. Canada, nice. Canada, Bay Area, India, Texas, brilliant, brilliant. Lots of Canadians, excellent. Jersey, nice. Georgia, Atlanta, San Diego, brilliant, brilliant. So this is pretty generic, guys, for a decent resume. A little bit about me. So I am a product manager with about 4 years of experience. Before that, I was a business analyst, and I also was a team leader of business analysts. So I would be hiring a business analyst about once a month, which is where I got a lot of my hiring manager experience. And before that, I was doing sort of technical change management, system engineering, that sort of thing. One thing I did wanted to communicate, guys, is I'm not an expert. I'm not a HR expert at all. These are just some things that I've learnt over my time. I've been focusing a lot on my career recently. Just wanted to pass on my learnings. You will see me in the resume review channel pretty much daily. I aim to review a resume once a day. It's my nice little give back activity for the day, and I think it's a real testament to the community. All right, so let's get started. If anyone has any questions or comments, please put it in the chat. I've got it open. That would be very helpful as well. All right, so we're going to go through a little bit of what's a resume, some example resumes, some top tips, some bottom tips. If you're starting from scratch, how to build a resume, some resources that I've picked up. And I'm also hoping to do a bit of a live review, guys. So if you want to, put your resume in the resume review Slack channel. And when we get to it, I'll try and pick one randomly and review it live. Cool. So what's a resume anyway? And I mean, I think you guys know what a resume is by now for sure, but essentially it's one thing to keep in mind that it's your foot in the door. It's very much your first impression. It's the tip of the iceberg of you and your career. When I say tip of the iceberg, I mean it's meant to give you a little bit of a teaser about what your skills and experience are. It's not the full you. The full you is generally what you reveal in an interview. So it's one thing to keep in mind. At the end of the day, it's a first impression, and they matter, unfortunately. So you need to have attention to detail, that kind of thing. And it's your first written deliverable, essentially, to this organization that potentially might be your next organization. So it's its own product. It's got a market fit. That market is the organization you're hoping to join. It's got an actual user persona behind it. You should be iterating it, and it should have attention to detail as well. And the other thing that I think a lot of resume sort of advice misses is it's not just about your profession, your career, your skills. It's also about your personality. I really like to encourage everyone to show off your personality, through either volunteer work or experiences with like interests, hobbies, that kind of thing. Don't be afraid to show that off. And I'm sure you've heard it all before, guys. Hiring managers have 7, maybe 10 seconds to actually read this. So they might not be reading every word. They might just be scanning it top to bottom. So you've got to keep it really tight, 7 seconds worth. And I think at the end of the day, a hiring manager is looking to learn about your current situation. So did you just graduate? Are you just coming out of an internship? Have you done a lot of volunteer work? What's your skills or experience that you can offer? And then what's the organization or role alignment? So there needs to be either keywords or at least some sort of a hint that you can align well to the organization. And that goes a lot more into organizational culture and alignment of values and things like that. And the other thing a hiring manager would look for is very much your product mindset and also the execution of that mindset. So have you got that product thinking space, but are you also able to do the work behind it? So let's start with some examples, guys. So one of these examples is a bad example, one of these is a good example. And it's funny, I think everyone wants to know what would really make a resume stand out. It's different from what you would think. So the resume on the left, very standouty. It's got a background, it's got a headshot, it's got some colors, it's got some buttons and things like that on it. And the one on the right is just words. But if I was a hiring manager, I would pick the one on the right because to me, that's only like 3 paragraphs to sort of scan. That's a very quick, simple, easy to digest resume. Whereas the one on the left, I sort of have to think about, well, hang on, where do I start? Why is that headshot a baby? Do I start on the left column? Do I start on the right column? It's essentially, oh, hang on. There's too much visually going on. So I have to put my mental effort to understand what the layout of this resume is. Whereas on the right hand, the effort that I need to spend just goes on to reading. So yeah, it's a very uncommon thing. It's a very counterproductive to think, oh, hang on, graphics can actually make things worse because you're adding to that mental load that people need to read and understand and comprehend. So definitely have a think about that in terms of what's making it stand out for your audience. And your audience might have read 50 resumes that day. So the least amount of mental effort is much better. Do you have any graphics on your resume? I would say definitely try and use some subtle colors in your resume. So, you can change the color
Hey,
of your
Brandon,
title.
not sure
Yeah.
if you're changing slides, but the slide is stationary on the screen.
Yeah, I haven't changed slides yet.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh. I'm getting to it.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely you can use some subtle coloring to make things stand out, but the thing is to note is to make it very simple, make sure the effort is minimal. And it's okay to have a 2-column graphic, that's fine. Just make sure it's not too much, it's not too busy, it's not too complex for someone to read. So let's jump into my top tips, and my apologies guys if this sounds a little bit ranty. It's just all these tips that I've picked up throughout my time. And while you do aim for 1 page, you got to make sure that it's not cramped. I've seen a lot of resumes that you can see someone's tried to fit absolutely everything onto 1 page, and it's like an 8-size font. There's little sections and text boxes everywhere. Very difficult to actually understand. I have seen some good 2-page resumes for someone who had like a 20-year career, lots of sort of achievements, and that's completely fine. But 1 page generally is preferred. And be consistent. So this again goes back to the hiring manager and their mental effort that they can expend on reviewing your resume. So consistent titles, same font, same type of bullets. So not just being consistent on the page, so your dates are aligned, all that sort of thing, but also the aim is to be consistent with everyone else's resume, which again, I know sounds counterproductive, but if I'm picking up a resume and it's got the same section titles as your resume, that's a lot easier to compare 2 resumes together. And it also helps that mental load because it's section by section. Just checking the chat. I have 2-page resume. Is it okay to leave some experience, early career out to keep the 2 pages? Yeah, Marcella, definitely. I think you're only, maybe your 4 or 5 most recent roles, making sure they're relevant, keep them on. By all means, your earlier career, like, guys, I started working on a help desk. I don't have that in my resume anymore. It's just not relevant. And speaking of that, less is more. If you reduce the non-relevant content, you're actually going to find your words are actually becoming more concise and it's actually looking much better. So aim for quality, not quantity. I'm sure you've heard that all the time. Now, bullets are an interesting one. you should really say one big impactful thing at a time. I launched a product. I led a marketing initiative. I made a roadmap. I did some stakeholder engagement. I made a change. I improved a process, that kind of thing. And that's obviously followed up with some verbs like, increased customer satisfaction, reduced processing time, that kind of thing. And then you support it with your actions. There's multiple actions into launching an app or a product. So state those actions that you yourself did. Not what the app did, not what the business did, but what you did. And then follow that up with numbers. So make sure that you can actually quantify your impact. And a lot of people think that that might be dollars or users, but I think just quantifying things in general helps show off your product mindset. To be able to say that you worked with a team of 12 or engaged with stakeholders, there was 40 of them. To be able to say that you've done, 6 iterations of a prototype, that kind of thing. Don't be afraid to quantify if you can. The other important one, and this is especially important if you're constantly updating your resume, is to make sure that your LinkedIn matches. So one of the things that HR will do is check your LinkedIn against your resume, and if any of that's different, that'll be some confusion, and that will actually put you lower down in priority when it comes to actually choosing. So make sure it matches. I generally like to even just copy and paste from my resume directly into LinkedIn when it comes to my job descriptions. And the other big tip, definitely that's helped me in my past, has been research beyond the job description. So I know we all like to look at the job description, pick out keywords, see what the responsibilities are, but you can actually do some research on what are the company values. If a company values collaboration, for example, make sure that collaboration is reflected in your resume. You can look at other job openings to find out what their tech stack is. Look at what their developer job descriptions are like to find out the tech stack. Look at their design job openings to figure out what sort of design tools they're using. It gives you good insight what to put into the actual resume when you're tailoring. And yeah, as I said before, show some personality through your volunteer roles or your interests. So guys, a few years ago, I hired a business analyst because one of their interests was traveling. And essentially he said that he hiked 400 miles on the Italian coast. That was all he said. He said he hiked 400 miles on the Italian coast. And he had the basic business analyst qualifications, but we remembered him because we were like, whoa, Italy, he's just hiked 400 miles. I want to find out more about that. Let's bring him in for an interview. Talked about it. He took us through his planning process. He took us through sort of organization and then working through it and then even reviewing it at the end, how the trip was. That was fantastic. And that made him stand out to us. To be able to say, hey, that's the guy that hikes versus this is the person that volunteers. This is the person that does hiking as a hobby. This is a person that does, climbing as a hobby. It's a good way to actually help that mental, this is the hiking guy, this is the climbing person, that kind of thing. So definitely don't be afraid to show off some personality. And of course, common knowledge, tailor your resume for each opportunity. So I know some people like to have a bank of bullets, but it's good to sort of pick out different bullets that apply to different job openings. Again, if you've done your research around company values, sometimes that can change your resume as well, tech stack as well. And in terms of the not so top tips, the don'ts at this. So don't use personal pronouns. I see a lot of sort of summaries or bullets to sort of say, I did this, or my job was this, or my role was this. It's unfortunately a very personal thing. And I think that sort of puts a person back into a personal context, whereas most resumes need to be in the professional context. So best to do no person. So don't use standard acronyms as well, or non-standard acronyms, I should say. So guys, I'm sure as product managers, you guys know that acronyms like APIs, UAT, PDLC, PM, REST APIs, that kind of thing, that's standard. That's fine. But I think when it comes to your previous work experience or maybe your previous study, it's very easy to just abbreviate things or acronymize them. And that can be a little bit difficult to understand. So you need to check that your audience will understand those acronyms and make sure you don't use any acronyms that would be confusing to someone. And in a similar vein, you also got to make sure that you don't use internal vocabulary. So the thing to remember is that the person reading your resume hasn't worked in your organization, they haven't gone through your university course, they don't know you. And if you start using terms like, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but user experience is a good example that some people, hyphenate user experience. Some people call it user testing. Some people call it usability testing. And essentially, it's the same activity. If you've done your research about an organization, or at least what the standard terms are in product management, make sure that you're using your standard terms so that when someone's reading it, they don't have to think, well, this person said usability testing. Do they mean our version of usability testing, or do they mean user testing or user research or something else? So again, this one's a pretty common one. Don't use buzzwords, don't use fluff, don't use filter. Definitely, I think hiring managers have their buzzword radar on. If you say, that you promoted synergy, or, you're passionate about something, completely understand that energy, that's fine. But you've got to make sure that you're not inflating yourself too much, because hiring managers look out for that. And at the end of the day, it's a word on your resume that might not be as valued. And again, the whole quality over quantity thing, make sure that you're not using fluff or filler words. You don't have to elaborate on absolutely every single thing you've done in your role or your study. So you have to be very careful. Is this a buzzword? Is this a very inflated topic? You've got to try and stay humble, guys. I know that's a very difficult task, but try and stay humble. And don't hack the application process. I've seen some crazy sort of techie hack solutions. Some people will copy and paste the job description into their resume and make the text white and small to try and help keyword matching. Guys, HR systems are a lot more advanced these days. They can tell when you're trying to hack a system. I've heard of people trying to upload a corrupted resume so that they can contact HR and talk to HR and get their foot in the door that way. It's just not worth it at all. You'll get flagged. Another one, this is very picky of me, don't italicize titles. So guys, this is where I'm going to sound really nerdy. Italics, in terms of the actual font format, was invented to emphasize something within a sentence, not an actual title. So when you italicize a title, you're actually demoting it in the reading order, and it makes it look like you essentially care less about that title. Best not to do it. It's perfectly fine to italicize something within a sentence, but not the title alone. And another one is very much, don't bold significant words or emphasize these sort of words that you think might be keywords. It basically forces your reader to not follow the standard sentence structure. So the words there, don't, significant, emphasize, random, we're forcing the reader to read a different structure to what they normally would be. I would also suggest, bolding your quantified numbers, your percentages, your revenue, that kind of thing. That's perfectly fine. But definitely don't bold sort of different words, because you're forcing your reader into something that essentially they don't want to do. They want to read your full bullet. Headshots, leave them to LinkedIn, guys. I've seen lots of headshots in my time as well. If they're maybe a little bit more accepted in terms of your country or your area or the role that you're applying for, sure, it's personal preference. Everything's up to you guys. It's your resume, but I wouldn't suggest headshots. The other thing to keep in mind is that HR systems are very advanced these days. So they might actually, the company that you're applying for might have something called blind hiring. So essentially what they do is they grab your resume, they remove your contact information, your name, so that you can't be identified. And that would mean also headshots would get removed as well. The other reason too is headshots can create a bias. So, for example, if you're a redhead and someone's ex-girlfriend was a redhead, they might look at that poorly and go, "Oh, that person's a redhead. I'm going to think of them in terms of my ex-girlfriend." So that would create a bias. Hopefully that wouldn't happen, but generally the less is much better. And don't be afraid to start from scratch. So there's Pam there starting with her little resume, company secretary. Sometimes, guys, I start with a complete blank slate, and that's completely fine to do for jobs. Don't be afraid. If you've had your same resume format for 5 years, 4 years, or whatever, and you're just sick of it, you're bored, scratch it out, archive it, start from scratch. So when it comes to actually creating that resume from scratch, you can create your basics. You can check that your LinkedIn is right. You can maybe update your email address. Summary. So I get a lot of questions around summary. Summary is probably one of the most difficult parts to do. It's 2 or 3 sentences. It's what your current situation is. It's top skill level, experience, achievement, and then it's what you're looking for. I've got some examples that I'll share with you guys as well later in the channel around what good summaries can be and what bad summaries can be also. Education, so college, your degree, what years you did it, GPA if it's high, certifications. You don't generally need to go into all your coursework or your clubs or societies or everything like that. Most hiring managers just want to make sure that you've actually done your degree. What counts as a high GPA? Up to you guys to really define. I mean, if you've done a proud sort of effort, close like 3.9, 3.8, anything above 3.5 perhaps, by all means put it in. Doesn't necessarily mean if you've done a bad one that you shouldn't do it. It's completely up to you.
Gotcha.
And then work experience, or if you haven't got much work experience, projects, volunteer experience, that kind of thing, definitely add in. And then bulleted impacts. So I'd suggest no more than 5 bullets for each experience, guys. No more. So that impact needs to start with something. You've achieved something, you've led something, you've enhanced it, you've solved it, you've reduced it, those action sort of verbs. I've got some resources around those action verbs that you can use that I'll share around later. And what that impact was. You launched something, you changed something, you've done that large activity that you're proud of. And how did you measure that? If it's the users, if it's the actual amount of visitors, if it's the audience, if it's the stakeholders, if it's the prototype iterations, that kind of thing. And then how you actually supported that. So what was your action? Did you coordinate it? Did you execute it? Did you look after the backlog? Did you code it? Did you design it? What were those supporting skills that you used to make that impact? Is it okay to explain on the course certificates completed if I don't have a lot of work experience? Yeah, of course. If you don't have a lot of work experience, guys, feel free to elaborate on your projects or your course experience as well. Just make sure that it's not too long. Don't just list every single subject. Skills, of course, skills, I like to break them down between technical skills. So what sort of software stack you're used to? I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of metric reporting, so Google Analytics, a lot of visualization, so Tableau, that kind of thing, a lot of your technical stack that you use, and then followed up with some soft skills. So this one's often a difficult one to do because you can either aim too high and say, hey, I can do product management. That's a skill. That's too high level, guys. That's a whole role title. So you need to break it down to medium level skills. So what's involved in product management? Well, it's prototyping, it's design, it's iteration, it's execution, it's a little bit of project management, it's a little bit of market and competitor research. You've really got to hit the middle ground when it comes to those soft skills. And interests, as I was saying before, show off your personality in this one, guys. So for example, I have interests of reading in my resume, which I know is a little bit boring, but I say I like to read science fiction, I like to read classic literature, and I like to read product management books. That's why I'm a member of the book club. So to be able to at least show off some personality, don't be afraid to. And then once you've done, focus on the iteration of your content, not the design. Again, I know it's very counterintuitive because you want to make sure it looks good and the layout's fine and all that sort of stuff. But pick out a bullet and go, well, hang on, is that the best way to explain that impact and that measurement? Pick out, education. Here's my degree. Does that accurately explain what I did to a hiring manager? Don't be afraid to change around in terms of the sentence structure, another way of saying it. Get your thesaurus out, look up different ways of actually saying it, and then you focus on that iteration. So, guys, I'll share with you some resources that I've found. The Wansalting guys, part of our community, Jonathan and Jerry, fantastic guys. If you aren't following them on any sort of social media, then I don't think you care about your career, to be honest. They are fantastic. They're blowing up on TikTok right now. A lot of great advice, not just on resumes, but cover letters, networking, LinkedIn profiles, things like that. Definitely look them up. They're amazing. Another one I used to use is Resume Worded. So Resume Worded is kind of like an applicant tracking system in that you can upload your resume and that will give you a quantified score out of 100 about how your resume is doing. And it will break things down like buzzwords. It will actually pick up the amount of buzzwords you have or what might be a buzzword. It will pick up the length. It will pick up quantified bullets. It will pick up any typos, of course, obviously. And it's definitely worth even just doing the 1 month trial. You can upload as many resumes as you like. You make sure that it's scanned properly, and you can work towards a high score as well, which is fantastic. Jobalytics. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Jobalytics. It's a Chrome extension that basically you upload your resume, and for every job description that you see on Chrome, it will give you a percentage breakdown of how much your resume matches according to keywords. So that's also a handy one to have. And you'll see the screenshot there. It's highlighted keywords that I do have, like roadmap, product manager, development, and it will also highlight keywords that I don't have, like execution. That's also a little bit of info that you can use to adjust. Another resource, and I'll share all these guys later on. Google actually have a great resume video, not necessarily if you're applying for Google, but it actually breaks down the bullets and how to quantify your bullets in terms of that process, in terms of accomplish this by doing this as measured by this. That's fantastic as well. Hemingway app, I'm sure you guys have heard of, that analyzes your sentence structure to make sure it's actually clear and readable. That's also a good one. JobScan is also good. And YouTubers. So Alex Rekovensky, he hasn't really done anything lately, but he also does live resume reviews on his YouTube channel, a lot of growth resources as well. Diego, he's in our community. He does fantastic work. He does some brilliant mock interviews as well. Look him up. Dr. Nancy Lee as well. She's great. And the Rocket Blocks guys also do some really good mock interviews, which gives you a good example of, well, what would be on my resume to get to that exam, to get to that resume, to get to the interview mock up as well. And if you know any other resources, guys, that's not listed here, feel free to share completely. I'm always looking out for good resources. All right, live review. Let's see what we got in the Slack channel. One sec. All right, I'm just having a look. At whose resume will I pick? JobSeer, another Chrome extension. Brilliant. All right, Yash, do you want to unmute Yash and turn your camera on? We'll try and review your resume.
Hi.
How are you, Yash?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you.
That's good. Are you comfortable seeing your resume on screen there?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for being a volunteer. So let's have a look-see. Yeah, your name could probably be a little bit bigger at the top there. Hey, it's your name. Don't be afraid to show it off. Definitely put it up a couple of font sizes for sure. Oh yeah, brilliant. You got your phone, you got your location, you got your LinkedIn. Fantastic. Education up top, brilliant. Masters in Engineering Management and Instrumentation, brilliant. Brilliant. GPA, nice, very nice. So guys, generally the rule is with education, if it's recent, put it up the top. And work experience, Centre for Wash Aid, Duke University. Okay, cool. So here's one thing I probably haven't mentioned, guys, is what I find in my experience is a lot of hiring managers look for your role title before they look for where you've actually worked, so they can see the progression of your career. And while, SAP's a great company, Barclay is very well known, it's a good idea to maybe swap the location of those two so the product manager stands out. So I can see that you've gone from full stack developer to associate product manager to product manager. So if you maybe swap those titles around, that will help the hiring manager see that progression a lot easier. Okay, so we've got some bolding here. That's actually not so bad in terms of you've bolded the first few words, so it isn't forcing the hiring manager into reading a different order. Even if you don't have PM experience, definitely role title is fine. As long as you can show off that product mindset, definitely the job title should come before the organization. Android, iOS application in Figma, nice. Saving the cost of development and outsourcing application development. Cool. That sounds like brilliant activity. It's just not quantified, however, Yash. So are you able to say maybe how many prototype versions you've done, or maybe a dollar figure of what that cost is, do you think, Yash? Yeah, cool. Wireframes, even how many wireframes, what was the backlog total, that kind of thing. Stakeholders, another good thing too, guys, is obviously product managers need to be able to present to stakeholders. So maybe how many it was it executive stakeholders, what format it was it a slide deck, was it a data visualization, reporting, that kind of thing as well. More than 30 apps and 10K reviews, most critical features, brilliant. I think I'd probably want to know sort of how that was used, that market research, because obviously that's a really good deliverable. I'd want to sort of know how it was used later on for product development. Conduct user research, brilliant. SAP HANA, so I'm not too familiar with SAP and S4 HANA. That's probably another good example of an acronym that might be confusing to some people as well. Like UI, UX, Jira, it's all very good acronyms that it's standard. It's probably just that HANA one that's probably a little bit less. Card acquisition, cool. I see you've got a lot more bullets in your earlier role than you do at your top role. And I understand because you've only just started in January. But also generally, I think having more bullets for the most recent roles is also preferred as well. But I can see you've got some even you're a full stack developer, I can see your product mindset here in terms of, well, you actually collaborated and did that bi-weekly releases with your stakeholders, that facilitation, which is great. And you became a subject matter expert, security and logging framework, brilliant. Because, that's the other thing as well, to sort of go, well, I want a product manager to be concerned about security and logging from that technical angle to make sure that that's actually done. That's fantastic. Internship in Singapore, nice. Yeah, again, so that acronym of BITS as well, I'd want to check that. Really wouldn't know what that is, so spelling that out. NLP, that's a perfectly fine acronym, natural language processing, everyone knows that. And some projects. Okay, cluster, S&P, underwater vehicle design and study, that's awesome. See, that's something I'd want to ask you about in an interview and go, tell me about this underwater vehicle design and study. That's brilliant. Technical skills, yeah, probably could be a little bit more skills if possible. I think, and this is probably your shift from being that full stack developer into more of a business project management type product manager, to have more soft skills. So I see that you were collaborating and doing bi-weekly release stuff. Put that sort of organization in as a soft skill and that collaboration as a soft skill. And at the end of the day, guys, more skills helps the matching, helps your chances of getting an interview. Charitable activities. Cool. So the other thing with activities too, guys, is I'd want to understand a little bit more. So don't be afraid to elaborate on your volunteer work. So student consultant for this solution lab, I'd want to sort of understand what your actions were with that. What's your impact? Are you consulting with 10 different students? Are you mentoring? Are you coaching? Have you made 10 different solutions in that lab? That kind of thing. Teaching volunteer, nice. Again, what sort of activities are involved in that? And I see you've got a PM online certificate from Udemy. Well, that's great. I'd probably almost put it up in your education section as well. I think sometimes I see a lot of everything else. It's volunteer stuff, it's project stuff, it's also some certifications and self-learning stuff. That's great. I think being able to separate it into, well, here's some certificates I did, that's still under education, and here's some degrees as well, and then here's also some other charitable activities as well, to be able to split that up. Cool. So what do you think, Yash? I mean, I can see your product mindset here. Only a few minor changes. I think that's fantastic, mate. What do you think?
Yes, you are on mute.
Yeah, hi. Thanks a lot for reviewing. I mean, that's like great changes that you suggested. I have mentioned few things that are like my organizational stuff, which I need to change. But yeah, increases my confidence in resume.
Brilliant. I mean, the other thing too with the skills is, I think skills is also very good to duplicate it, because it's a nice little ending summary of your skills. Because even though I've read, your work experience, what your skills are, to be able to sort of almost duplicate them in these technical skills, to be able to go, yes, this summarizes Yash in a very good way down to his skill set. So that's brilliant.
I did have one question.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah, so I tried to quantify my whatever I did, but do you really think that I should quantify more? I mean, you did mention few points for first job, but in general.
Yeah. So for example, I think you said you were doing some prototyping and some wireframes. Like even just quantifying that would be good, because I don't know if that's one wireframe or two wireframes, or was it 40? Because you were, it gives you an idea of what sort of a workload that you were working with, or what sort of an output that you're used to as well. All right. And I'll also follow this up in the Slack channel as well, Yash, so you've got some written notes as well. So question time, and I will answer, I think, Helena's question first. Advise against putting your address on your resume. Yeah, so I think, county, state, rough location, state is fine, or country if you're applying for international roles. You don't need to put your exact street address. No one's going to send you any snail mail or knock on your door at all to offer you a job, unfortunately. So you don't need to put your exact street address in. But make sure that your state, your country, general area is there.
Hey guys, if you guys have a question, raise your hand and Darsh will call on you and spotlight you. So yeah, back to Brendan.
Yeah, thanks, Vash. Any questions?
Brendan, I think we have few hands raised. Dwanika,
Right.
You can go first.
Actually, I raised my hand for a resume review. If you have time towards the end, Brendan, Yash's review was really valuable. Thank you so much.
Got it. Nikhilesh, do you have any question?
Yeah, I had a question. Hey, Brendan, thanks for this. I think Kevin brought up a great question, and I just wanted to point the attention to it. Like, how should you quantify projects / work that are ongoing if you don't have results for them just yet?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a very tough one when something's still in progress. And I think it's also a very good point when you start a project or a new initiative to say, what do I want to put on my resume? Do I want to put users? Do I want to put what my activity was in it? Unfortunately, sometimes you've just got to wait for those metrics. It's depending where that product is in that life cycle. For example, after launch, even just user acquisition is enough to sort of say, well, you're quantifying something because you know what you're measuring. Or even before that, how many test versions you've done, how many MVPs that you've gone through iteration is fine. Even volunteer experience, how many people you've worked with is fine.
Okay.
I think it generally just gives the hiring manager an idea of what sort of a workload or work environment you're used to working in.
Okay.
So if you're in an environment that you're working with 100 stakeholders, that's pretty huge versus 10 as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No worries.
Next up, Jeet, do you have any questions? You want to unmute yourself?
Hi, Brendan. Thanks for amazing presentation. While reviewing Yash's resume, you mentioned this thing about certification, like online certification to put into the education side. Could you please elaborate into that? Because like I have a couple of certifications which I have put in skills and certifications on my resume. Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And look, it's completely up to you. It's your resume. But generally with hiring managers, your education section includes not just your college degrees, but also your certifications. You can split them up if you want to. That's completely fine. But I think when it comes to that mental effort of someone being able to say, what has this person learned in their career? They expect to see a degree or two, and they also expect to see what you've currently learned. I think these days, guys, product managers are learning every single day, right? Both formally and informally. So to be able to see, okay, this guy has done his degree 3 years ago, but since then he's actually done, 4 certifications as well, is also a good thing because it shows that you are constantly learning. That's why I prefer to put it all in that one section, but completely up to you as well, again.
Thank you so much. That makes sense. Thank you.
No worries.
Shaunak, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had one question. Hey, Brendan, thanks for the session. Most of my personal PM experience actually comes from few internal products that I helped develop. Now, my question is, the metrics for this for the usage of these products, it's pretty small. Let's say, like on a scale of maybe 10,000 user month or so, but like since these are internal products, the user base is like only 100 users or so. Is it okay to put such metrics when the let's say the volume is not that high?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I think if you haven't got so much volume, but you're applying for a product that has maybe, 1,000,000 times worth much more volume, that's completely fine. Someone, I think, at Google isn't expecting that you've got a Google level product to match with. I think just being able to explain that it's an internal product, that you've quantified that your metrics, and I think if you do have such a small volume, it's also good to elaborate on the impact of what you've done for that business. So what has that internal product enabled for the business? Because essentially, if it's an external product, you're doing something to the users, right? Your impact is on the users. Your value is on your users. If it's an internal product, your value is on the business, because hopefully that's enabling the business to do something.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense? Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next up, Noel, do you have a question?
Hello everyone. Thank you very much for the presentation. I learned a lot. The main question I had was regarding like being overqualified. Do you think there could be a situation where you have so many things on your resume and you're deemed overqualified?
Yeah, I think if you are qualified, that's still a great scenario to be in. But when it comes to actually having that stuff on your resume, reduce the amount of actual qualifications you've got, or at least prioritize what's relevant to the role. Because I think your career and your role description isn't going to match up. So therefore remove everything that's not relevant. So be completely ruthless remove the least relevant thing. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir. But the thing is, like the question is like towards an internship. Like let's say I've done like 5 projects. Um, is it like is it gonna be like to an advantage if you add all 5 and show that you've been doing a lot of stuff, or do you just do like 3 or 2 big projects that you've done?
Yeah, focus more on the 2 or 3 and what impact they made. Because again, it's quality over quantity. The amount of projects don't really matter. It's the impact that you've made in each of those projects. The other thing too is if you're changing careers maybe, and that you're seeking an internship, and even though you've been established or have multiple years of experience, have a summary up the top that says, "Hey, I'm looking for an internship so I can learn," basically, to explain that current situation as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
No probs.
Hey, Brandon, since we have 10 minutes left, would you want to review one more resume?
Let's go.
I'd love for you to review my resume from last year. Maybe that's a different version from what we reviewed just now, just to give our users a different perspective in resume.
Yeah. Have you sent it to me or something?
I shared it on the resume review channel.
Cool. Oh, hang on, it's just loading. And guys, if you've posted in the resume review channel, I'll be reviewing it later on anyway. So I'll send you some notes.
Also, if you have any ideas looking at other people's resume on Slack, feel free to leave a comment. That's our way as a community to give back.
Yeah, guys, that's the other thing as well. Like, I'm not the expert. I'm merely just fresh eyes on this resume, and you all have fresh eyes. The best person to review your resume is just someone who hasn't seen it before. So call out what they like about the resume, call out any sort of feedback at all. Would be great. All right, Dash, was this from a year ago, were you saying?
Yeah, it's from October 2020.
Okay, cool. What's on your personal link, Dash? Is it your profile portfolio?
Yeah, it used to be my portfolio. It's not online anymore, but I just expired it a few weeks back.
Okay, yeah. See, I think some people like to link their GitHub or even their Instagram or something like that, and that's fine if you want to. I just think when it comes to people reviewing resumes, they haven't got the time to investigate every link. So for sure, that sounds good. Georgia Tech, Atlanta, brilliant. GPA 3.9, nice. Graduate teaching assistant, student council, year-long HCI project, built job hub, use pain points such as lack of mentors via 25 research. Brilliant. So that's brilliant quantification, how many research sessions you've done. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a product, it just means how many sessions you've done. That gives me a good idea of what sort of workload you had for that project. And a design project achieving 87% usability scale. So Dash, how did you measure that usability scale exactly?
Yeah, we did user studies and did user study evaluations using system usability scale. And there's just straightforward algorithm. You just do few tests, and depending on the results you get, you put it out.
Okay, cool. Then to be submitted in CHI 2021. Yeah, so again, that acronym, I can see that HCI is human computer interaction. That's pretty standard. And then, so what's CHI?
So CHI is a very well-known conference in HCI.
Okay.
So I think it would be relevant to folks who would be related to HCI, but that's a good call out.
Yeah, I mean, if it's well known, cool. But yeah, you got to think about the audience, I guess, if they know it or not as well. Oh yeah, cool. Secretary of the student club, fantastic. Minded in finance and business. I'd hire you, Dash. I'd hire you, mate. What do we got here? Again, yeah, in terms of, everyone knows the UPS. And it's I can see here you've had 3 roles in UPS, but if you were to put the job titles in front, I'd be able to see more easily that you've moved from being an engineering intern to a product manager to associate product manager as well. So I can see your progression with the job titles would be good. Own planned ideation, execution, and launch of a prototype to improve UX, submitting and tracking business opportunity by employee referrals. Yeah, I generally suggest these bullets are probably a little bit too long to read. So I had a similar bullet like this. You've owned planning, ideation, execution, and launch. That's a lot of activity up front. So to be able to say, even just launched a prototype and then follow that up with planning, ideation would be good. Increasing platform engagement, 30% in revenue. Yeah, brilliant. Quantifications, fantastic. Yeah, so that led product strategy discussions could probably be its own bullet to be able to elaborate on what those discussions were. What sort of format was it? Did you do any deliverables around that product strategy? That kind of thing.
Got it.
And again, yeah, operational cost 5%, brilliant quantifications. 5 years, 12 seconds package retrieval. Go to machine learning. Yeah, so I think this second bullet point here around collaborated with cross-functional teams of analysts, engineering and UX, and then coded machine learning models in Python, 2 very separate activities. So you've got to be careful to say one thing at a time. So I would almost, have the coding as a separate bullet point for sure. What else we got? Like project design. That is 20 years stakeholders. Yeah, again, good qualification. How many interviews that you've done. So again, if I was a hiring manager, I could go, hey, Dash could do 20 user interviews if he started today. Fantastic. Again, there does seem to be a lot of sort of led, like you led some research, you owned this, you led the development, maybe it's a little bit of duplication. I see a lot of planning, I see a lot of development, I see a lot of design. But I think being able to sort of pick out what was your key activity in each one of those bullets would be good as well. This one's always an interesting one too, being able to explain what the location was, or like what the company was doing, or what the product is. I think you've quantified, like you've actually given a very brief sort of.
Yeah, is that
duplicated?
Yeah, that's a typo.
Oh no, Dash. I would not hire you now.
No, I think this is the template version that I use. That's why. But
it's your old one. That's fine, and I think that's good. I would almost, but in terms of consistency though, I would expect a similar description about UPS as well, just to keep it consistent. But it's a good length as well. I've seen some descriptions about, when the business was established and when they were acquired, or what sort of a revenue, and it's too long. So you've got a very nice short description there of, hey, industrial gas company by market share. That's all I need to know about the group. Developing CMS UI, Python, brilliant. Again, being able to see that you were the intern at the start would be good as well, to be able to see that progression from software engineering up to product. Would be good. Leadership roles. Well. Product buds. Sounds good. Head of engagement strategies and product studies. Fantastic. Community. Brilliant. I'm back to hiring you again, Dash. That's fantastic. Great quantifications of the members, the petition, like the engagement rates, live webinars. Fantastic. Also shows me a little bit of personality about you as well, which is brilliant. Sponsor negotiations. Yeah, even the club secretary stuff very much talks about your personality. So that's awesome as well. Social volunteering, photography, for example. Perfect. Oh yeah, and you've got some projects down here as well, and personal website and GitHub. Yeah, again, probably wouldn't link those projects unless perhaps you were going for more of a technical role, for sure. It just helps cut down the number of links. Like linking product buds, it's probably excellent because you can check it out. It's just a very simple website to check out. But yeah, in terms of the technical sort of stuff, I probably wouldn't link. But overall, very good. Like one page, the fonts, easy to read. It's not boring in terms of it's black and white. You've got a brilliant use of subtle color there. Fantastic.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, the hope here is like everybody who's looking at it, probably you get some ideas for your resume. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vasant.
Yep. Everyone, thank you guys all for coming out and sticking around through our multiple resume revisions and all of the amazing insight that Brendan had to provide. You guys can find more information about Brendan, his LinkedIn, in the chat, and all of the Product Bud socials as well. So be sure to give us a follow wherever you might browse the internet. But yeah, thank you guys all for coming. And yeah, thank you, Brendan.
Brilliant.
Any last words or last advice, Brandon?
No, just keep an eye on the resume review channel, guys. Please contribute as well, not just as me. I will try and review everyone I can, of course, but don't be afraid to contribute on others' resumes. Start the discussion and share. So sounds good.
Thank you
thanks
so
for having
much.
me.
Definitely. If this was useful for you and you appreciated Brandon's advice, please give a shout out to Brandon on LinkedIn. I feel like he has been helping out Product Bits since almost a year. Like he's no short of our team member. So definitely, if you found this useful, make a short post on LinkedIn, give him a shout out. That's a great way to show your appreciation. We will too. So with that, hope everybody has a great night. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.